All right. Well, that was a long video. Hopefully, you didn't watch the whole thing. We want to talk about actually uh, some ratios that we can determine to figure out what the liquidity actually is within a business and also the solvency. So go back to your definitions of those two things. Maybe read back through that balance sheet chapter and see the uh, the definitions for those things. Liquidity being, of course, the a measurement of being able to cover our short-term obligations. Our solvency is just a quick and down and dirty kind of a definition would be, can we cover all the obligations, whether they be current or long-term within a business, without bankrupting ourselves? So, and we want these determinants to be positive, hopefully, when we actually make the assessment. But here's a few, and they're just like, I'll probably use this term several more times in this class, and it's because of the practical nature that I want to instill in this kind of a class, is that they're quick, they're down and dirty, and they actually tell us some great information. We can come up with all kinds of ratios, and there is, that we can perform on the balance sheet, but does it really tell us anything? And there might be some that you would want to pull out and see if you can determine some trends within your business and things like that. But here's a few that are very simple and easy to do and keep track of over time. So the first one is a liquidity measurement. It's called the current asset. Some of you, or maybe all of you, or a big percentage of you, are familiar with it. And that's just simply taking the current assets divided by the current liability and showing it as a decimal equivalent or a ratio. Okay, so in this case, for an example, if we have if we don't have too many, these could be, it could be $250,000 worth of current assets and $100,000 worth of current liabilities. But just for simplicity, we're going to use 250 divided by 100, and we get a current ratio of $2.50 of assets, of current assets, for every dollar of current liability. So if you could actually just say that you have a current ratio of $2.50. That's implied that it's a ratio of 250 to 1. Okay? Simple calculation there. And this one says that you do have enough current assets to fulfill your obligations in current liability. If we had a different example where we had 50 as a current asset calculation or our numerator, and current liability was still 100, then we would have a 50 cent, right? We'd have 50 cents for every dollar, which is a little glum forecast if we just use it for one thing. Okay, that's one measurement. And so we at least, and it doesn't mean that it's healthy, want to have enough current assets in order to meet our current liabilities. I'm not saying a 1-to-1 would be a very healthy ratio. Something over 1 would be somewhat healthy in that regard. So this one gives you that example that we just kind of went over with a little bit different numbers. Okay? So current ratio, it's a down and dirty type of ratio. We can monitor it. We can look at it over time from one balance sheet to the next and see if we're seeing any improvement, if that's what we want, if that's one of our objectives, if that's one of our goals. Another liquidity measurement is just in terms of dollars. What's healthy and what's not. Okay, we already explained that slide, I guess, but working capital would be another measurement. And the working capital just says, like using the first example that we did with the current ratio would be that we had $250 worth of current asset for every $100 of current liability. So that means we have working capital of $150. So that would be in surplus to all of our obligations, is all that is reading. And we can use that again. We want to use that number, because why calculate it if we don't use it? If our objective or goal is to actually have a higher working capital, we want more than $150. So we can establish that as one of our goals in our company or our business. Okay, so here's the working capital with not enough current assets to meet our current liabilities or current obligations. And these numbers are somewhat dire. It says we're going to have to change management somehow. We're going to have to figure out how to get blood out of a turnip, or we're going to have to change our business strategy with this kind of an answer that we get from these calculations where it's a negative. We at least want to have a zero and a healthy working capital as surplus. And you're going to have to determine for your own business where the comfortable level of that would be. More is not always the reason, but a 2-to-1 ratio for a current ratio would be a fairly healthy type of a ratio. Okay, so if it's less than zero working capital, again, that's not a very good indicator within our business. It's just a down and dirty, just a really, really simple kind of a calculation for that. And we're going to have you perform these on some more balance sheets than I'm going to give you. Okay. The solvency measures, I'm just going to have you calculate 2, but there's more. And if you find a couple that actually work for you and make more sense to you, go for it. The debt to asset ratio, that's total debt, total liability over total assets, okay? If we have it less than 1 for a debt to asset ratio, then that's considered somewhat healthy. Maybe not real healthy. Maybe for your business, and especially in an agricultural sense, as we go through our business season, we have some volatility and some unpredictability within the business. We want a very healthy would be 2-to-1 or better. Again, in this kind of a scenario as well. So don't think just because you're less than 1 that you have a healthy ratio. If it's greater than 1, not so much. That just means you have more debt than you have resources and assets within the business. So if it gets down below 1, that means that you're in a potentially bankruptcy situation. The equity to asset ratio, go back to your definition of what equity is. That's your owner's equity or net worth over your assets. And it's just saying, okay, as a ratio, what is your percentage ownership, or what's the ratio that you have as far as your owner's equity over your total assets? Close to 1 is better than closer to 0, and it's going to fall between 1 and 0 in these cases. I wanted you to perform these within the homework assignment 2 on these balance sheets. Okay? So that's what I want you to do for this week. This is a really short video compared to the last one, so I'm going to make it even shorter by quitting right now.